The plane was supposed to be quiet at this hour. It was a red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York, and most passengers were trying to sleep. But nobody could sleep now, not with the sound that was cutting through the cabin like a knife. A baby was crying, not just crying, screaming. The kind of desperate, heart-wrenching wails that make your chest tighten and your nerves stand on edge. In seat 2A of first class, David Chen sat frozen. His 18-month-old daughter Lily was in his arms, her tiny body shaking with each sob. Her face was bright red, tears streaming down her cheeks, and nothing he did seemed to help. David was worth over $3 billion. He had built his tech company from nothing, turning a simple idea into an empire that employed thousands of people. He could negotiate million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He had given speeches to world leaders, but right now, facing his crying daughter, he felt completely helpless. 6 months ago, his world had changed forever. His wife Rachel had lost her battle with cancer, leaving him alone with Lily. Since then, every day had been a struggle. He was learning how to be a single father while running a company, and it wasn't going well. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Just a quick business trip to New York for an important meeting. His nanny was supposed to come with him, but she had gotten sick at the last minute. David had thought he could handle one night alone with Lily. How hard could it be? Now he knew the answer. Very hard. Lily had been fine during takeoff. She had even smiled and clapped when the plane lifted into the air. But about an hour into the flight, something changed. She started fussing, then whimpering, then full-blown screaming. And she hadn't stopped since. David tried everything he could think of. He offered her a bottle. She pushed it away. He tried her favorite stuffed animal. She threw it on the floor. He bounced her gently, walked up and down the aisle, even attempted to sing a lullaby his wife used to hum. Nothing worked. The other first-class passengers were getting angry. David could feel their stares burning into his back. A businessman in the seat across from him kept checking his watch and sighing loudly. An older woman behind him had already asked the flight attendant about changing seats. "Sir, is there anything we can do to help?" asked Jennifer, one of the flight attendants. She had kind eyes, but David could see the stress in her face, too. This wasn't just bothering the passengers, it was becoming a problem for the crew. "I don't know what's wrong," David said, his voice cracking slightly. "She's never been like this before." "Maybe it's the pressure? The altitude?" Jennifer nodded and tried to help. She brought warm milk, different toys, even a small blanket that was softer than the one David had packed. But Lily just cried harder. David felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool cabin air. His shirt was sticking to his back and his hands were shaking slightly. He realized he was having a panic attack, something that hadn't happened to him since the early days of his business. Back then, when everything was falling apart and he thought he might lose everything, he used to have moments like this, moments where the pressure felt too much, where he couldn't breathe properly, where he felt like he was drowning. But he had learned to control those feelings. He had learned to stay calm under pressure, to think clearly when everyone else was panicking. That's what made him successful. That's what made him rich. But this was different. This wasn't about money or business or deals. This was about his daughter, and he had no idea what to do. "Maybe she's hungry," Jennifer suggested, bringing another bottle. David shook his head. "She ate right before we got on the plane, and she won't take the bottle now. Could be tired. She usually sleeps really well. This isn't normal for her." Other passengers were starting to complain more loudly now. David heard someone behind him say, "Can't they do something about this? Some of us have important meetings tomorrow." Another voice added, "If you can't control your kid, maybe you shouldn't bring them on a plane." David felt his face burning with shame. He knew they were right to be frustrated. The crying was incredibly loud, and it had been going on for over 2 hours now. If he were in their position, he would probably be annoyed too. But hearing those words still hurt. Especially because deep down he agreed with them. Maybe he shouldn't have brought Lily on this trip. Maybe he wasn't cut out for this whole single father thing. Since Rachel died, David had been struggling with guilt. Guilt that he couldn't save her. Guilt that he didn't spend more time with her before she got sick. Guilt that he was failing as a father now that she was gone. Rachel had been the one who knew everything about taking care of Lily. She knew exactly what each cry meant, what foods Lily liked, which songs would make her smile. David had always been too busy with work to learn those things. He thought he would have time to figure it out later. Now later was here and he was lost. Lily's crying was getting even more desperate. Her little voice was getting hoarse, but she couldn't seem to stop. David was bouncing her more frantically now, trying anything to calm her down. "Shh, baby girl," he whispered. "Please, just tell Daddy what's wrong. I want to help you, but I don't know how." The businessman across the aisle finally stood up. "Excuse me," he said loudly to Jennifer. "I paid a lot of money for this seat and I need to sleep. Can you move me somewhere else?" "Of course, sir," Jennifer replied. "Let me see what we have available." David watched as the man gathered his things, shooting dirty looks in their direction. Other passengers were doing the same thing, asking to be moved, complaining to the flight crew, making it clear that David and Lily were causing a major problem. David had never felt so alone. In all his years of business, even during the toughest times, he had always felt confident that he could find a solution. He could always think his way out of a problem, always come up with a plan. But this wasn't a business problem. This was life. Real, messy, complicated life. And for the first time in years, David Chen, billionaire, successful entrepreneur, master of his universe, felt completely and utterly defeated. Lily kept crying and David kept trying. But deep down he was starting to believe that maybe he really wasn't good enough for this. Maybe some people just weren't meant to be parents. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, everything was about to change. 3 rows behind the chaos in seat 15B of economy class, Maya Washington sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. She had been watching the situation unfold for the past 2 hours and her heart was breaking. Not because of the noise. Maya was used to crying babies, it was part of her job. She worked as a pediatric nurse at Detroit Children's Hospital, and she had heard every type of cry imaginable. Hungry cries, tired cries, scared cries, sick cries. Each one told a different story if you knew how to listen. And this cry was telling her something important. Maya was naturally shy. She had been that way since childhood. While her 5 younger siblings were loud and outgoing, Maya was always the quiet one. The one who watched from the corner, who noticed things others missed, who preferred to help from the shadows rather than step into the spotlight. Even at work, she was known as the gentle nurse. The one who could calm the most difficult patients, who could spot problems before they became serious, who could comfort worried parents with just a few soft words. But she never pushed herself forward. She never demanded attention or tried to be the hero of the story. Tonight, though, something was different. As she listened to that baby's cries, every instinct she had developed over 5 years of working with sick children was screaming at her. This wasn't just a fussy baby. This was a baby in real distress. The way the little girl arched her back when she cried, the specific pitch of her screams, the way she pulled at her ear with her tiny hand. Maya had seen these signs hundreds of times before. She was almost certain the baby had an ear infection, and the pressure changes from flying were making it much worse. But how could she help? She was just a passenger in economy class. The father was clearly wealthy. He was sitting in first class wearing an expensive suit, probably used to having people solve his problems for him. Would he even listen to her? Maya looked around at the other passengers. Most were covering their ears or putting on headphones, trying to block out the sound. A few were muttering complaints under their breath. Nobody seemed to care that a child was suffering. They just wanted the noise to stop. This made Maya's heart hurt even more. She thought about her own childhood, growing up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other, where if a child was crying, everyone would try to help, where community meant something. Her grandmother always used to say, "Baby girl, when you see someone hurting and you have the power to help, you help. Doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, black or white, stranger or family. We're all just people trying to make it through this world." Maya reached into her purse and touched the small pen light she always carried. Old habits from nursing school. She never went anywhere without basic medical supplies. A pen light, some hand sanitizer, a few bandages. Her friends teased her about it, calling her Nurse Maya even when they weren't at work. She also touched the small leather journal where she wrote down her prayers and thoughts. Flying always made her nervous and writing helped calm her down. Tonight she had been writing about her upcoming job interview in New York. The interview was at Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical centers in the country. They were offering her almost double her current salary, excellent benefits, and the chance to work with some of the best doctors in the world. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But Maya wasn't sure she wanted it. The money would be nice. She could finally pay off her student loans, help her mother with the mortgage, maybe even start saving for her dream of opening a community clinic someday. But leaving Detroit meant leaving behind the families she had grown to love, the community that needed her. At Detroit Children's, Maya worked mostly with kids from low-income families. Kids whose parents worked 2 jobs and couldn't always afford the best medical care. Kids who came to the emergency room for things that should have been caught earlier, if only they had access to regular checkups. Maya had grown up in that same situation. Her mother had worked as a cleaning lady at 3 different office buildings, leaving before dawn and coming home after dark. When Maya or her siblings got sick, they usually just had to tough it out unless it was really serious. Doctor visits were expensive and there wasn't always money for them. That's why Maya became a nurse. She wanted to be there for families like hers. She wanted to be the person who noticed when something was wrong, who could offer help and comfort when parents were scared and didn't know what to do. But now, watching this wealthy man struggle with his crying daughter, Maya realized that money doesn't solve everything. This father had all the resources in the world, but he was just as lost and frightened as any parent she had ever met. The baby's cries were getting weaker now, more hoarse. Maya could tell the little girl was exhausting herself. If this kept up much longer, she might make herself really sick. Maya took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly. They always did when she was nervous. But she knew she couldn't just sit here and do nothing. This baby needed help, and Maya was probably the only person on this plane who knew what kind of help she needed. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up slowly. Her legs felt unsteady and her heart was pounding. Maya hated being the center of attention, and she knew that walking up to first class would definitely draw stares. But as she made her way up the aisle, all she could think about was that little girl's cry. It reminded her of her nephew Tyler when he was a baby. He used to get ear infections all the time, and Maya had learned to recognize the signs. The way babies cried differently when their ears hurt, like the pain was coming from deep inside their heads. The flight attendant, Jennifer, according to her name tag, tried to stop Maya as she approached the first-class cabin. "I'm sorry, miss, but economy passengers aren't allowed in first class," Jennifer said politely but firmly. Maya's voice came out softer than she intended. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she said quietly. "I think I might be able to help with the baby." Jennifer looked surprised. She glanced back at the father, who was still desperately trying to calm his daughter. The baby's face was bright red now, and she was starting to sound really sick. "Let me ask him," Jennifer said. Maya watched as Jennifer approached the man. She could see him look up with exhausted, desperate eyes. When Jennifer pointed back at Maya and explained that she was a nurse, the man's expression changed completely. He nodded immediately, almost frantically. Maya could see the relief flooding his face, the look of a drowning man who had just been thrown a life preserver. As Maya walked those last few steps toward the crying baby, she felt her nervousness fade away. This was what she was trained for. This was why she became a nurse, not for the wealthy patients or the prestigious hospitals or the impressive salary offers. For moments like this, when a child was hurting and needed help, when a parent was scared and didn't know what to do, when her quiet voice and gentle hands could make a real difference. Maya didn't know it yet, but this moment was about to change her life forever. Sometimes the biggest changes come not from the opportunities we chase, but from the simple decision to help when we see someone in need. She approached the father and his crying daughter with steady hands and a calm heart, ready to do what she did best, bring healing to a child who was hurting. "Hi there," Maya said softly as she knelt down beside David's seat. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper, but somehow it cut through the baby's cries. "I'm Maya. I work with children at a hospital in Detroit." David looked up at her with red, exhausted eyes. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know what's wrong with her. Nothing I do helps." Maya's heart went out to him immediately. She could see this wasn't just a frustrated parent. This was a man who was truly scared for his child. His expensive suit was wrinkled and damp with sweat. His perfectly styled hair was messy from running his hands through it. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "What's her name?" Maya asked, her voice still gentle and calm. "Lily," David replied. "She's 18 months old. She's usually such a good baby, but tonight—" "Hi, sweet Lily," Maya said, talking directly to the little girl. Even though Lily was still crying, Maya noticed her eyes focus slightly at the sound of this new, soothing voice. I know you're not feeling good, baby girl. Let's see if we can figure out what's bothering you. Maya had learned long ago that the first step in helping any child was to stay calm yourself. Babies could sense when adults were panicked or stressed, and it made them more upset. So even though her heart was racing from nerves, Maya kept her voice steady and her movement slow and deliberate. Can you tell me when she started crying like this? Maya asked David. About 2 hours ago. Maybe a little more. She was fine during takeoff, but then... David shook his head helplessly. Maya nodded. Has she been sick recently? Any fever, runny nose, anything like that? David thought for a moment. She had a little cold last week. Nothing serious, I thought. The doctor said it was just a virus. Maya felt her suspicions growing stronger. And has she been pulling at her ears at all? Maybe during the day, before the flight? David's eyes widened. Yes, actually, yes. I thought she was just playing, but she kept touching her ear. The left one, I think. Now Maya was almost certain she knew what was wrong. She reached into her purse and pulled out her small pen light. Would it be okay if I took a quick look? I promise I'll be very gentle. David nodded immediately. Anything, please. Maya turned on the tiny light and very carefully examined Lily's left ear. The little girl was still crying, but she didn't pull away from Maya's touch. Maya had a way with children. Her hands were always warm and gentle, and kids seemed to instinctively trust her. What Maya saw confirmed her diagnosis. The ear canal was red and inflamed, clearly infected. And with the cabin pressure changes from flying, the pain would be intense for a baby. I think Lily has an ear infection, Maya explained quietly to David. The pressure from flying is making it much worse. That's why she's in so much pain. An ear infection? David looked confused. But how? She seemed fine this morning. Sometimes they come on really fast, especially in babies, Maya said. And the pain gets much worse when you're flying because of the pressure changes. It's like having someone squeeze your ear from the inside. David felt a wave of guilt wash over him. His daughter had been in real pain this whole time, and he hadn't known. He had been thinking about the other passengers, about how embarrassing this was, about how he was failing as a father. But Lily had been suffering, and he hadn't even realized what was wrong. Is there anything we can do? He asked desperately. Can we help her? Maya smiled gently. Actually, yes. There are some things we can try to relieve the pressure and make her more comfortable. First, Maya showed David how to hold Lily upright against his chest instead of lying her down. This position helps the fluid in her ear drain a little better, she explained. Then she demonstrated a very gentle massage technique, using her fingertips to make small circles behind Lily's ear. This can help relieve some of the pressure, Maya said. Like this, very soft, very gentle. As Maya's skilled hands worked, something amazing started to happen. Lily's desperate screams began to quiet into softer whimpers. Her tiny body, which had been rigid with pain, started to relax slightly. It's working, David whispered in amazement. She's actually calming down. But Maya wasn't done yet. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a small bottle of children's pain reliever. I always carry this when I travel, she said. Just in case. Would you like to give her some? It should help with the pain. David nodded gratefully. Maya carefully measured out the right dose for Lily's age and weight, then showed David how to give it to her using a small syringe she had brought. You came prepared, David said. Impressed despite his exhaustion, Maya blushed slightly. My friends always tease me about it. They say I carry a whole pharmacy in my purse. But working with sick kids, you learn to always be ready. As the medicine started to work and Maya continued the gentle massage, Lily's cries grew quieter and quieter. For the first time in hours, David began to feel hope. But Maya had one more trick up her sleeve. She began to hum softly, an old spiritual her grandmother used to sing to her when she was little. The melody was simple and soothing, passed down through generations of women who had comforted crying children. The effect was almost magical. Lily's eyes, which had been squeezed shut with pain, began to open. She looked up at this stranger with the kind voice and gentle hands, and for the first time all night she stopped crying completely. The airplane cabin fell silent except for the hum of the engines. Other passengers began to peek over their seats, amazed that the crying had finally stopped. The flight attendants exchanged relieved glances, but Maya barely noticed any of that. She was focused entirely on Lily, who was now looking at her with wide, curious eyes. Maya continued humming and gently stroking the baby's hair. She's beautiful, Maya said softly to David. She has your eyes. David felt tears welling up in his own eyes. Not tears of frustration this time, but tears of relief and gratitude. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know how to thank you. You saved us. Maya shook her head. I just did what any nurse would do. What anyone should do when they see a child hurting. But David knew that wasn't true. Maya had done something special here. She had seen a problem that everyone else just wanted to go away, and she had chosen to help. She had used her knowledge and her kindness to bring peace to a desperate situation. As Lily settled into her father's arms, finally comfortable for the first time in hours, David found himself looking at Maya with new eyes. Who was this quiet woman who had appeared like an angel when he needed help most? He was about to find out that Maya Washington was much more than just a helpful stranger. She was about to become the most important person in both his and Lily's lives. But first they were going to talk, and in that conversation, both their futures would change forever. With Lily finally peaceful in his arms, David felt like he could breathe for the first time in hours. Maya was still kneeling beside his seat, gently stroking Lily's tiny hand. The baby's eyes were growing heavy as the pain medicine kicked in and exhaustion took over. She should sleep for a while now, Maya said quietly. The pressure in her ears will get better as we descend for landing. I can't thank you enough, David said, his voice thick with emotion. I felt so helpless. I didn't know what to do. Maya stood up slowly, preparing to go back to her seat. Being a parent is hard, especially when you're doing it alone. Something in her voice made David look at her more closely. There was understanding there, not just professional knowledge. Like she knew what it felt like to worry about a child, to feel responsible for someone smaller and more vulnerable than yourself. Please, David said suddenly, don't go back to your seat yet. I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you, to thank you properly. Maya hesitated. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and she could feel other passengers still watching them, but something in David's eyes made her stay. He looked genuinely grateful but also lonely, like he needed someone to talk to as much as Lily had needed medical help. Okay, she said softly, settling into the empty seat beside him. The businessman who had been sitting there had moved to the back of the plane hours ago. I'm David, by the way, he said, carefully adjusting Lily so she was more comfortable against his chest. David Chen. Maya Washington, she replied. And this little angel is Lily. She really is an angel most of the time, David said, looking down at his daughter with such love that it made Maya's heart ache. Tonight was different. I've been struggling since my wife died 6 months ago. Rachel always knew what to do when Lily was upset. She had this magic touch. Maya felt a wave of sadness wash over her. I'm so sorry for your loss. That must be incredibly difficult. David nodded, his jaw tightening slightly. Cancer. She fought for 2 years, but... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. And now you're raising Lily by yourself, Maya said gently. Trying to, David replied with a bitter laugh. I thought I could handle anything. I run a tech company, deal with million-dollar decisions every day. But a crying baby? I'm completely lost, Maya smiled softly. You know, the best parents are usually the ones who worry they're not good enough. The fact that you care so much means you're probably doing better than you think. I don't feel like it. I have a nanny who helps during the week, but she got sick at the last minute. I thought one night alone with Lily would be fine. I was wrong. You're learning, Maya said. And every parent goes through moments like this. Even the ones with partners, even the ones who seem to have it all figured out. David studied Maya's face. You sound like you speak from experience. Do you have children? Maya shook her head. No, but I grew up as the oldest of 6 kids. My mom worked 3 jobs after my dad left, so I basically helped raise my younger siblings. And now I work with children every day. 6 kids, David said, impressed. That must have been chaos. It was, Maya laughed, and David noticed how her whole face lit up when she smiled. But it was also beautiful. Loud and messy and exhausting, but beautiful. My little brothers and sisters taught me more about love and patience than any nursing textbook ever could. Where do you work? David asked, genuinely curious. Detroit Children's Hospital, in the pediatric unit. I've been there for 5 years now. That must be rewarding work, but also heartbreaking sometimes. Maya nodded. It is both. You see kids go through terrible things, but you also get to help them heal. You get to be there for families during the scariest moments of their lives. There's nothing else I'd rather do. David heard the passion in her voice, the genuine love she had for her work. It reminded him of how he used to feel about his company in the early days, before it became about money and market share and board meetings. "So what brings you to New York?" he asked. Maya's expression changed slightly, becoming more uncertain. "I have a job interview tomorrow. At Mount Sinai Hospital. That's a big deal, isn't it? Mount Sinai is one of the best hospitals in the country." "It is," Maya agreed. "They're offering me almost twice what I make in Detroit. Better benefits, opportunities to advance, work with some of the top doctors in the world." "But you don't sound excited about it," David observed. Maya was quiet for a moment, looking down at her hands. "It's complicated. The opportunity is amazing, and the money would change my life. I could pay off my student loans, help my mom with her mortgage, maybe even start saving for my dream." "What's your dream?" "To open a community health clinic in an underserved neighborhood. Somewhere kids can get checkups and vaccinations and basic care without their families having to choose between medical bills and rent money." David felt something stir in his chest. He had heard a lot of people talk about their dreams over the years, but usually they involved getting rich or famous or powerful. Maya's dream was about helping others. "That sounds like an incredible goal," he said. "So why aren't you excited about a job that could help you achieve it?" "Because taking this job means leaving Detroit. Leaving the families I work with now. They need people who understand what it's like to grow up poor, who know what it means when a parent has to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table." Maya's voice grew stronger as she talked about her work. "I know what it's like to be the kid whose mom can't afford to take you to the doctor unless you're really sick. I know what it's like to feel like the system doesn't care about people like you." David found himself hanging on every word. When was the last time he had met someone who cared about something bigger than themselves? Someone who turned down opportunities because they might hurt other people? "The kids in Detroit need advocates," Maya continued. "They need people who will fight for them, who will make sure they get the care they deserve. If I take this job in New York, I'll be working with wealthy families who already have access to the best medical care money can buy." "But you'd also be advancing your career," David pointed out. "Learning new skills, building connections. Maybe that experience could help you open an even better clinic someday." Maya sighed. "Maybe. Or maybe I'd get comfortable with the bigger salary and the prestigious job and forget about the kids who need help the most." David was quiet for a moment, thinking about what she had said. In his business, people were always chasing the next opportunity. The bigger paycheck, the more impressive title. He had done the same thing for years, telling himself that success would let him help more people later. But when had he actually started helping people? When had his success translated into making the world better? "Can I ask you something?" Maya said, breaking into his thoughts. "Of course. What's your company? What do you do?" David hesitated. Usually when people found out he was wealthy, it changed how they treated him. They either became overly impressed or suddenly distant, like money created an invisible wall between them. "I own a tech company," he said simply. "We develop software for healthcare systems." "That's interesting. Does it help hospitals work better?" "In theory, yes. We create programs that help doctors keep track of patient information, schedule appointments, manage medical records. The idea is to make healthcare more efficient." "That sounds really useful, especially for busy hospitals that serve a lot of patients." David nodded, but he felt a familiar knot in his stomach. "It started that way. I wanted to use technology to help more people get better medical care. But somewhere along the way, it became more about profits than patients." "What do you mean?" "We sell mostly to wealthy hospital systems now. The ones that can afford our high-end software. The community clinics and small hospitals that really need help with efficiency. They can't afford what we're selling." David had never admitted that out loud before, not even to himself. But talking to Maya, seeing her dedication to helping people who couldn't help themselves, made him realize how far he had drifted from his original purpose. As the plane began its descent toward New York, both David and Maya were thinking about paths not taken, dreams deferred, and the strange way life sometimes puts exactly the right person in your path at exactly the right moment. Neither of them knew it yet. But this conversation was about to change everything. As the plane began its final descent into New York, David found himself dreading the landing, not because of flying, but because it meant saying goodbye to Maya. This conversation had been the most honest, meaningful talk he'd had with anyone in months. Lily was sleeping peacefully now, her tiny hand curled around David's finger, The crisis that had brought them together was over, but David felt like something important was just beginning. The descent should help with her ear pressure, Maya said softly, checking on Lily one more time. But you should definitely take her to a pediatrician tomorrow to get antibiotics for the infection. I will, David promised. Then before he could lose his nerve, he said, Maya, can I ask you something? And please be honest with me. She nodded, curious. If money wasn't an issue, if you could open your community clinic right now, today, with unlimited resources, what would it look like? Maya's eyes lit up immediately. Oh, that's easy. I've been dreaming about this for years. She shifted in her seat, suddenly animated. It would be in the heart of an underserved community. Not just a clinic, but a whole health center. Pediatric care, of course, but also dental services, mental health support, nutrition education. She was talking faster now, her hands moving as she painted the picture. We'd have a pharmacy on site so families wouldn't have to travel across town to fill prescriptions. And childcare during appointments so parents could focus on their own health too. What else? David asked, genuinely fascinated. Mobile units to reach families who can't even get to the clinic. School programs to teach kids about nutrition and exercise. Community gardens to help families grow their own healthy food. Maya paused, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. I know it sounds impossible. Too big, too expensive. It doesn't sound impossible at all, David said quietly. It sounds necessary. Something in his tone made Maya look at him more closely. There was an intensity in his eyes that hadn't been there before, like he was working through a complex problem in his head. Maya, David said suddenly, what if I told you there was a way to build that clinic? Not someday, not after years of saving money, but soon, within the next year. I'd say that sounds too good to be true, Maya replied carefully. David took a deep breath. He was about to make a decision that would surprise even him. I want to make you an offer. And before you say anything, I want you to know that this isn't charity. This is business. Maya waited, her heart beating faster. I want to start a foundation, a healthcare foundation focused on serving underserved communities, and I want you to run it. Maya stared at him. David, I don't understand. You don't even know me. We just met a few hours ago. You're right, we just met. But in those few hours, you showed me more about real healthcare than I've learned in years of running a medical software company. You saw a child in pain and you helped even though nobody asked you to, even though it wasn't your job. David shifted Lily carefully so he could face Maya fully. I started my company because I wanted to help people get better medical care. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. I got caught up in profits and market share and impressing investors. That happens to a lot of people, Maya said gently. But it doesn't have to keep happening. You reminded me tonight why I got into this field in the first place. You reminded me that technology and resources mean nothing if they're not reaching the people who need them most. Maya was quiet for a long moment. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that we build your dream clinic. Not just one, but a whole network of them. I'll provide the funding and the business infrastructure. You provide the medical expertise and the heart. We start in Detroit, then expand to other cities. David, that would cost millions of dollars. I know. I can afford it. David's voice was matter-of-fact. Maya, I'm worth more than $3 billion. I could fund this foundation and not even notice the money. But what I can't do is what you do. I can't connect with patients the way you do. I can't see what really needs to be done. Maya felt overwhelmed. It was like someone had just offered to hand her the moon. I don't know what to say. This is incredible, but also terrifying. Why terrifying? Because it's so big. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not good enough for something this important? David smiled. The first real smile Maya had seen from him all night. A few hours ago, I was convinced I wasn't good enough to take care of my own daughter. But you helped me see that caring about doing the right thing is what makes someone good enough. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and the captain's voice came over the intercom welcoming them to New York. Around them, passengers began gathering their belongings and preparing to disembark. You don't have to decide right now, David said as they prepared to leave the plane. Take your job interview tomorrow. Think about what they're offering you. Then think about what we could build together. Maya nodded, still processing everything that had happened. Can I ask you something? Why are you doing this, really? David looked down at Lily, who was just starting to wake up from her peaceful sleep. Because 6 months ago, I lost the most important person in my life. and I realized that all my success meant nothing if I couldn't use it to make the world better for my daughter. He met Maya's eyes. You helped Lily tonight, but you also helped me. You reminded me what really matters. This foundation isn't just about helping other people, it's about honoring my wife's memory and building something meaningful for Lily to inherit someday. As they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the plane, Maya felt like she was in a dream. 12 hours ago, she had been a nervous nurse flying to New York for a job interview that she wasn't even sure she wanted. Now she was being offered the chance to change thousands of lives. "Here's my card," David said as they waited in the aisle to disembark. "My personal number is on the back. Call me after your interview tomorrow. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that meeting you tonight changed my life." Maya took the card with trembling hands. "David, don't say anything yet," he interrupted gently. "Just promise me you'll think about it." As they walked off the plane together, Lily woke up completely and gave Maya a sleepy smile. The little girl who had been screaming in pain just hours before was now peaceful and content. Reaching out her tiny hand toward the woman who had helped her, Maya took Lily's hand in hers and felt a surge of purpose unlike anything she had ever experienced. Maybe this was what destiny felt like. Maybe this was what happened when the right people met at exactly the right moment. The next morning, Maya went to her interview at Mount Sinai Hospital. It went perfectly. They offered her the job on the spot, with an even higher salary than they had originally discussed. But as Maya sat in the hospital's gleaming lobby afterward, all she could think about was a conversation on an airplane about a crying baby who had brought two strangers together, about a man who had lost his way and a woman who could help him find it again. She pulled out David's business card and his personal number. Before she could change her mind, she dialed. "David, it's Maya. I've been thinking about your offer." 3 months later, the Chen Washington Foundation opened its first community health center in Detroit. Within a year, they had opened 2 more in Cleveland and Milwaukee. Within 3 years, they were operating in 12 cities across the country. Maya never did take that job at Mount Sinai. Instead, she found something better, a chance to turn her dreams into reality, and to do it alongside someone who shared her vision of using success to serve others. And Lily? She grew up thinking that the most normal thing in the world was having a second mom who could sing lullabies in 3 languages and who always knew exactly what to do when someone was hurting. Sometimes the most extraordinary changes in our lives begin with the simplest decision to help someone in need. Sometimes an act of kindness on an airplane can change not just 2 lives, but thousands. Maya learned that night that when you follow your heart toward service, the universe has a way of providing exactly the resources you need to make a difference. And David learned that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the lives you touch and the legacy you leave behind. Their story proves that miracles do happen, especially when good people with generous hearts find each other at exactly the right moment.